Follow us on Twitter for new alerts, Instagram for videos and images, and the website for the latest news, views, and analysis. WIONews.com. World is one.
Welcome. You're watching Gravitas with me, Molly Gambhir. Here's a look at what's lined up for you on the show tonight. Our cover story tonight focuses on the aftermath of the Wagner mutiny. We tell you how the focus is now shifting to Belarus. Satellite images show activities at an abandoned camp, and the rebellion has left behind some very big questions. What happens now onwards? What really is the Wagner Group's next mission? Is Belarus Wagner's new base now? Is the group planning a war in exile? Tonight on Gravitas, we tell you how the Wagner mutiny might have died down in Russia, but how this could be just the beginning of a new chapter. Also on the show for you tonight, as France witnesses days of riots and chaos, the president is seen partying, only adding to the people's anger. New research sheds light on the loneliness epidemic and how being lonely can be more dangerous than lack of exercise. A scary incident in Thailand has people talking about airport walkways, also called travelators, after a woman lost her leg in a travelator accident. We tell you more. Are you considering quitting your job? Do you feel like dropping everything and looking at new opportunities out there? Why stick to conventional jobs and roles out there? We tell you about the world's weirdest jobs and what made people opt for them. India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi just got off a phone call with the Russian President Vladimir Putin. What did the two leaders discuss? The war, the Wagner mutiny, rather the failed mutiny, which the Indian Prime Minister was briefed about during his flight to Cairo from Washington, D.C. the previous week. But let's just stop there for a bit and just focus on that failed mutiny and its fallout. What's next for the Wagner group? It has not been disbanded yet, but does it remain dangerous is the immediate question. Does the Wagner group continue to pose a threat to Vladimir Putin? Currently, it could be setting up a new base. You heard that right. Where exactly? Very close to the Russian border, in Belarus. There have, in fact, been some activities at a deserted military camp in Belarus. I am talking about this one. This military camp is around 100 kilometers from Minsk. And for the longest time, there was radio silence in this deserted camp. But now satellite images show tent-like structures springing up at the site. There are some 300-odd tents. Whose tents are these? And who is erecting them? And who will stay in them? The Wagner mercenaries, is it? We know for a fact that the Wagner boss, Yevgeny Prigozhin, is supposed to be in exile in Belarus, and that is the deal that he struck with Moscow following the failed mutiny. We also know that Belarus's leader, Alexander Lukashenko, agreed to accommodate the Wagner boss. Not only him, but also his men. But weren't the Wagner mercenaries supposed to be absorbed into the Russian military? Yes, that too was part of the agreement Putin's chef struck with his former boss. But the agreement said that only some of the Wagner fighters will be absorbed in the military. And they would have until the 1st of July to decide. And what about the rest of the fighters? They were always free to decide their fate. And it looks like they have chosen Belarus as their new home. I'll tell you what, there is more than just loyalty at play here. It's also about the money. A Wagner fighter earns around $2,700 a month. At the Russian military, soldiers make a little over $750 a month. You see the difference there? Remaining with the Wagner group is profitable for these fighters, to say the least. So many could be choosing to follow their leader into exile. And what will they do in Belarus? Plan something big? Another mutiny? But where will Wagner get its supplies from is the question. All the while, the weapons were coming from the Russian armed forces. This is something that Putin has openly admitted last week. And now, following the failed mutiny, that gravy train has most likely come to a halt. Weapons are not the only thing. The Wagner group also needs a military base to train. Previously, it was training at Molkino in Russia. If speculation about this base in Belarus are true, if the speculations are true, then the mercenary group does not need to worry about a roof over its head. And what's more, a new source for weapons may follow soon. Could it be the Belarusian army? Not too long ago, Lukashenko publicly declared that Belarusian forces have a lot to learn from the Wagner fighters. So could the training be in exchange of supplies? It's too early to tell, but what about the money? There is no dearth of it. Putin's chef has accounts and sources of income around the world, in Africa, in West Asia. So what should you be making of Wagner's supposed new home? And if it is regrouping in Belarus, what does it mean for the country? For Russia and Ukraine as well. Let's not forget, this group has tasted blood. It took control of an entire Russian city. I'm, of course, talking about Rostov-on-Don. And the Wagner group also sent a heavily armed convoy towards Moscow. It shot down Russian military aircraft. The Wagner group managed to dent the Russian President Vladimir Putin's leadership. It came dangerously close to triggering a civil war and got away with it all. Which, of course, set a precedent for other private armies in Russia. I don't know if you know this, but the Wagner group is not the only mercenary group in Russia. The Chechen president, Ramzan Kadyrov, has his own mercenary group. It is called the 141st Special Motorized Regiment, or Kadyrovsky. Gazprom, Russia's state-owned energy corporation, has at least 5 private armies. They are called Fakel, Potok, Plamira, Alexander Nevsky, and Redut. In fact, many Russian oligarchs support private armies as well. Russia's defense minister, Sergei Shoigu, also has founded a paramilitary force. It is called Patriot. This group is currently fighting in Ukraine. Wagner's fate in Ukraine is unclear, and chances are that the group may no longer fight on behalf of the Russian army. So could it be fighting against the army from Belarus? Wagner is already recruiting more soldiers, and this time not from prisons. If you remember, on Saturday, Putin signed a law that states that only the defense minister can recruit in Russian prisons. So Wagner is tapping into other pools as well. What for? Here's something Indian mythology tells you, that wars can be waged from exile as well. Let me now ask you this. How would you prepare for a job interview? You would update your resume, put on your best formals, look presentable. You would prepare for stereotypical questions like, where do you see yourself in 5 years? What are your strengths and weaknesses? That is the norm, is it not? But what if you were asked about your sexual history, your preferences in pornography? You may be wondering, what kind of violating questions are these? Let me assure you, these are not my words. According to a report, these are the kind of questions that were posed by Bill Gates' private office to women candidates. You heard that right. Women seeking jobs in Bill Gates' private office were asked sexually explicit questions. That is what this report from the Wall Street Journal says. Men were also interviewed, but none of them, according to the report, reported encountering such questions. As far as reports suggest, only women were put through this kind of embarrassment. And this is not even the beginning of it. Here are some of the explicit questions. Have you ever danced for dollars? Have you ever contracted a sexually transmitted disease? Have you had extramarital affairs? Do you have nude photographs of yourself on your phone? What kind of pornography do you prefer? Can you believe this? How is this going to affect your job role? How could these questions possibly help a firm determine a candidate's competence, their capabilities? Well, they clearly don't. Then what business did the interviewers have shooting away these questions? That too selectively towards the female candidates. Bill Gates' office has pinned everything on its security consulting firm, Concentric Advisors. Bill Gates' spokeswoman saying that background checks are done by third-party contractors and that Gates Ventures has not heard of such questions being asked. What is the multi-billion-dollar firm implying then? That it wasn't aware that women willing to work for it were put through such questions? The questions were aimed at finding vulnerabilities of the applicants. If the candidate got hired, she would work closely with one of the world's richest men. If anybody had dirt on her, she would be prone to being blackmailed or compromised, and it may be Concentric Advisors' job to run background checks. But in no way does it justify the questions that were asked. A pre-employment background investigation typically includes an examination of public records and databases, confirmation of resume content and reference checks. And then there is an interview to confirm the job qualification details, the applicant's background, and if he or she would be a good fit for the company. Private questions like the ones asked by Gates Ventures' contractor were not only offensive but blatantly questionable. That's what the employment lawyers are saying. Questions about a job candidate's medical or psychiatric history are unlawful. It does not matter if they are a part of a security screening for a private office. Even if a job candidate signs a consent form, it does not make the questions legal. Secondly, the explicit questions were only for the women applicants. What about men then? Did they not pose any security threat, or are they above being blackmailed? Gates Ventures has some questions to answer. When was the last time you were stuck in a horrible traffic jam, watching those minutes fly by while you are getting late, wishing you could just fly through? Well, what we have seen in sci-fi films will soon become a reality. That's right. We could soon see flying cars hovering over ordinary vehicles. You heard that right. The US government has approved the world's first flying car. Although the vehicle will have certain movement restrictions, it is 100% electric. How much does the flying car cost? When will we get to see it in the skies? How effective is it? Our next report telling you all about it.
Aleph Aeronautics has made headlines with its invention, the world's first flying car. The US has given the car the green light. The company says it has received a special airworthiness certification. Who provides this certification? All such inventions, like a flying car, have to go through the US Federal Aviation Administration. The FAA actively tracks the progress in flying cars. It shapes policies for electrical vertical takeoff and landing vehicles, also known as FTOL. The certification lays down restrictions on the locations and purposes for which the aircraft is permitted to fly. The FAA scrutinizes any type of flight in the US airspace, including personal, restricted, light sport, experimental, and special purpose flights. It has granted Aleph Aeronautics the approval to start testing the Model A. After the testing phase, the company can start selling it. The company's CEO, Jim Duchovny, shared his excitement, saying, "This allows us to move closer to bringing people an environmentally friendly and faster commute, saving individuals and companies hours each week. This is one small step for planes, one giant leap for cars." So what is the Model A? The company built the Model A prototype in 2016. The Model A has a driving range of nearly 322 kilometers. It has a flight range of 177 kilometers. The car has a seating space for 2 people, and this may come as a surprise, but it has a maximum speed of only 40 kilometers per hour. The makers are calling it a low-speed vehicle. The company assumes that if a driver needs a faster route, they will use the flight capabilities of the car. Aleph Aeronautics is marketing the vehicle at $300,000, and the company claims that it has already received over 440 bookings. But there is a cheaper model on the cards. It's called Model Z, which will make its debut in 2035. Model Z will be priced at only $35,000 and will have a flying range of over 480 kilometers. Will the new flying vehicles perform the way we expect them to? Bureau Report, WION World is One.
On to the US now, where the Supreme Court has effectively struck down reservations on the basis of race in university admissions. In a ruling announced yesterday, and this upends decades-old US policies on affirmative action or positive discrimination to help blacks and other minorities obtain higher education. You see, since the 1960s, this policy has increased diversity on American campuses by helping blacks, Hispanics, and Native Americans find a place in a range of campuses, from Harvard and Yale and Dartmouth of the Ivy League to others spread across the country. How and why did the American Supreme Court end a policy that helped generations to enter elite tiers of life, and indeed enabled America to preach to others on diversity and inclusivity? Let's take a closer look. Back in 2015, a non-profit organization called Students for Fair Admissions filed 2 lawsuits challenging the legality of the admission process at Harvard and University of North Carolina. Both these institutions attract tens of thousands of applications every year. Getting admission is a passport to success, many would say. Competition is fierce, but suddenly those in racial minorities for whom Harvard was once a dream also got an opportunity to show their talent. What were the best examples? Barack Obama and his wife Michelle. The group which filed the lawsuits is led by an opponent of affirmative action named Edward Blum. What was his argument? That affirmative action violates the Constitution and civil rights law, that it considers race and ethnicity instead of being purely merit-based, which affects the chances of deserving white candidates getting in. The group had an explicit agenda to end positive discrimination. Some of them had a personal grouse, for they had been denied a place which might have gone to them were it not for race-based discrimination. Lower courts ruled against the group in both suits. They upheld the admission procedures at the two universities. But the Supreme Court had the final word, and it says race-conscious admissions are at odds with the Constitution's promise of equal protection to all. And this has accentuated the political divide in America. Former US President Donald Trump, who has considerable support among white Americans, has said that it was a great day for America. Other Republicans also chimed in. The governor of Florida, Ron DeSantis, wrote on Twitter, and I'm quoting, "College admissions should be based on merit and applicants should not be judged on their race or ethnicity." But Democrats who sweep the black vote are infuriated. Listen to what US President Joe Biden said as a part of the White House address. Listen to what US President there said.
I've always believed that the promise of America is big enough for everyone to succeed, and that every generation of Americans, we have benefited by opening the doors of opportunity just a little bit wider to include those who've been left behind. I believe our colleges are stronger when they are racially diverse. I also believe that while talent, creativity, and hard work are everywhere across this country, not equal opportunity. It is not everywhere across this country. We cannot let this decision be the last word. I want to emphasize, we cannot let this decision be the last word.
Former President Barack Obama has also criticized the ruling. He said, and I'm quoting, "Affirmative action allowed generations of students like Michelle and me to prove we belonged." And how is this ruling going to pan out for the rest of America? How will it affect the children of color who dream of getting into prestigious institutions? Admissions counselors will have to rethink how students can discuss their race in application essays. Things are going to become difficult for students of color, particularly those who do not have a privileged background, like children of migrants. Competitive colleges are dominated by white youngsters. Let me just back that up with some facts and figures. California, as a state, banned race as a factor for admissions to public universities back in 1996. Decades on, the effects can be seen in the college campuses. Take the example of University of California, Berkeley. In the fall 2022 freshman class, just 228 out of nearly 7,000 students identified as black. You heard that right. Only 3.6% of the students were African American. Listen to what the students said.
I am in a major that doesn't necessarily hold that many students of color. Throughout my entirety of being at Berkeley, I've only met 2 other black students within all of my classes I've been in.
See, when you come to campus, you see black athletes on the walls and stuff like that, and it kind of almost creates this illusion of how diverse the campus is. But then when you get on the campus and you're one black student in a class of 80 people, it's okay, what's going on? Or where are more people that kind of look like me?
And now let's look at the statistics from Harvard, which has followed positive discrimination. 10.7% of the students in the class of 2022 identified as black. America may act as a flag bearer of diversity. Every other day, you will find a Western think tank publishing some report or the other, slamming the other countries for their inclusivity and gender gap. But you see, in reality, the roots of race discrimination run deep in the US itself. I am not the one saying that. You can see it in the headlines almost every day. The shootings of black people, the hate crimes. If the US plans to sideline minorities in a bid to promote its so-called equality, who is it trying to delude? Because this equality is selective. It may actually shut the doors of opportunities in the face of the less privileged children. Are you lonesome tonight? A question that Elvis Presley's classic song asks never gets old. In this day and age, in fact, loneliness has been called an epidemic. It is increasingly making its presence felt. At times, it is a byproduct of the social isolation that comes with today's lifestyle changes. You must have come across articles that tell you how to overcome loneliness or what to do when you are feeling lonely. There are exercises that are recommended, especially for overcoming loneliness and isolation, when working from home especially. Well, let me tell you what new research has now revealed. Loneliness is worse for your heart than lack of exercise. How exactly? Let me break it down for you. According to the research, loneliness may increase the risk of heart disease in diabetes patients. Basically, being lonely was found to be a greater risk factor for coronary heart disease as compared to lack of exercise or even smoking. What is coronary heart disease? Basically, when the blood vessels supplying the heart are narrowed or blocked. Can you believe that? The findings were published in the European Heart Journal, and what do they tell you is the question. They serve as a wake-up call, reminding us of the importance of having meaningful social relationships. The study author, Professor Liu Chi, has said that the quality of social contact appears to be more important for heart health in people with diabetes than the number of engagements, and that the importance of loneliness when it comes to one's physical and emotional health should not be downplayed. Let's just tell you more about how the research was carried out. Researchers studied data from the UK Biobank, which is an online database of medical and lifestyle records from more than 500,000 Britons, involving more than 18,000 adults, the age bracket being 37 to 73 years. Through questionnaires, researchers basically tried to determine how lonely the people were, also looking at other aspects like diet, also smoking, blood pressure levels, etc. It was a 10-year-long study, and these people did not have a heart disease at the beginning of the study. They had diabetes. But over the 10-year period, more than 3,000 developed heart disease. It was found that those who scored the highest in loneliness had a 26% greater risk of heart disease in comparison to those with the lower scores. So what is the advice? That patients with diabetes who feel lonely should try and tackle it by joining a group or class and try to make friends with people who have shared interests. Also, that asking patients with diabetes about loneliness should become a part of standard assessment. But these findings also once again highlight the importance of looking after your mental and emotional health. Seek help if you feel lonely, and do not treat loneliness as just another part of life, because it should not be normalized under any circumstances, and it is affecting you in more ways than you can imagine. Do not disregard the importance of social connections. Isolation became the norm during the Wuhan virus pandemic, but the epidemic of loneliness should be contained before things spiral out of control. Have you ever been on a travelator? Then you might know how ordinary and calm it is when you are using a travelator, but this ordinary experience turned into a nightmare in Thailand. A woman's leg got stuck. It had to be amputated. Let me break it down for you and tell you exactly what happened. The leg got wedged, but since when did travelators become a health hazard, and how did the passenger's leg even get stuck? This image signifies the horror that unfolded at a Bangkok airport. The passenger's lower part of the left leg has been cut off. The woman has to hold her nose due to the foul smell of a severed limb. Where did the other part of her leg go? And how did this even happen? At Bangkok's Don Mueang International Airport, the 57-year-old Thai passenger was scheduled to board a morning flight. She tripped over her pink suitcase while moving on the travelator. The passenger fell over and her leg got stuck in the moving walkway. Did the other passengers try and help? They tried, but they failed. Before they could activate the emergency switch, the travelator had already torn through the lower part of her left leg. This means that half her limb was under the travelator's belt. The medical team had no choice but to amputate the leg from above the knee. After the horrific procedure, she was rushed to the hospital, but doctors said they could not reattach her leg. On the passenger's request, she was also taken to a hospital for treatment. What did the airport authorities have to say? Airport officials have visited the woman while she goes through treatment. The officials say that they take responsibility for the incident and that they will be taking care of the medical expenses and the compensation. But just how did her leg get stuck in the moving walkway? You see, authorities have found suitcase wheels under the travelator belt. Investigators are examining if the wheels opened a gap for the legs to go through. The yellow comb-like plates at the end of the belt were also broken off. You see, machines depreciate over time, and that plays a crucial role in this incident. The airport's travelators are quite old. They were bought from the Japanese firm Hitachi and installed in 1996. The airport officials plan to change the machine in 2025. The old mechanism is bound to break and tear easily. And this, by the way, is not the first time an accident has occurred on the walkway. In 2019, a passenger's shoe was caught in another walkway. Although this was not a tragic incident, repetition of such instances leads to horrific accidents like the one we are talking about. We will be keeping an eye on the latest coming in. It has been 2 months since the writers' strike began in Hollywood. And over these 60 days, many shows have been halted. Filmmakers have reshuffled their release schedules and studios have lost billions. But now, small businesses in Los Angeles and beyond are taking a hit as well. Our next report telling you more.
We'll never be defeated. United, we'll never be defeated.
On May the 2nd, 2023, thousands of Hollywood screenwriters went on strike after last-minute talks with major studios over wages broke down. The strike is now entering its third month. The Writers Guild of America estimates that the strike is costing California's economy $30 million per day, which is a fairly huge amount. Earlier, it was only the big studios who were suffering. But now, businesses are struggling as the strike ripples through Hollywood's economy. Florists, caterers, costume suppliers and others are witnessing their orders dwindle as many are still recovering from disruptions caused by COVID-19. This is Pam Elia. She is the co-owner of a prop house called History for Hire in Los Angeles. Before the strike, Pam filled an average of 53 requests per week for various kinds of props. Now, due to the strike, the weekly orders have been reduced to an average of 26.
Businesses like that do what I do, there's hundreds of thousands of us in this town that, if I'm not renting to shows, that means I'm not using the dry cleaner, I'm not using the guy who does the plating, I'm not using the welders. So everybody gets affected straight across the board.
She estimates the revenue of the company has dropped by 60% and it is falling $100,000 short of meeting monthly expenses.
The biggest toll of a strike, of course, is the human toll, and it is the amount of people that they get marginalized, which is horrible. I mean, everybody in this business is important, above the line, below the line, and those of us that work below the credits, that we run small businesses. And even though there is a strike going on and there's a work stoppage, it doesn't stop my staff's rent. It certainly doesn't stop my rent. It doesn't stop our utilities. It doesn't stop our cost of living.
Meanwhile, Sassy Craft Services, which provides food and drink to sets in Los Angeles, used to book about 8 jobs per month with productions for companies including Netflix and HBO. Due to the strike, that has dropped to about 3. The owner of the services is now considering diversifying her income sources by becoming a Pilates instructor. It remains unclear how long the Writers Guild of America strike against studios and streamers in the Alliance of Motion Picture and Television Producers will continue. But industry analysts estimate it won't be resolved before September. Some have suggested that accepting the Writers Guild proposal would ultimately be cheaper for studios. The 100-day WGA strike in 2007 to 2008 resulted in the loss of 37,700 jobs in California and cost the state $2.1 billion in lost output. It took months for the impact to become clear as restaurants, logistics companies and cleaning services cut staff. Though economists say it is too early to measure the full economic toll of the 2023 writers' strike. Bureau Report, WION, World is One.
Stand in solidarity with you. We're here with you in the fight.
Moving on for now, with new industries coming up, new roles taking shape, many jobs have become obsolete, but some of the new professions can be labeled as unique, atypical, even quirky and weird. We are talking about professions like mermaiding. Have you heard of that? Or even being a professional sleeper or becoming a rental boyfriend. These jobs actually exist. Let's just tell you about the world's weirdest jobs. Talking first about a teacher who left her job to become a mermaid. You heard that right. In Italy, 33-year-old Moss Green quit her teaching career to be a professional mermaid. What inspired her to become a mermaid? It was actually because of a magical merman. This might sound absurd, but it's real. Green saw a man dressed as a merman on a local beach, and this incident pushed her to become a mermaid. So what's it like being a mermaid? She says the experience is exhilarating and also exciting. Wearing a tail in water makes her feel more in contact with nature and the sea. Green earlier saw mermaiding as a hobby, but everything changed when she got a job offer. So what is it like to be a professional mermaid? She says, and I'm quoting, "I needed to be able to hold my breath, dive down a certain distance, spin around, swim facing the sky, and name different fish." Let's just remind you, mermaiding does not earn you much money, but putting money aside, Green says that she has no regrets and that it makes her happier than ever. In fact, she says, and I'm quoting, "It's enough to live on, and I am doing something I love at the end of the day. That's all that matters at the moment. Who knows what could happen in the future?" But mermaiding is just the tip of the iceberg. Let's tell you about a profession known as legal bank robbing. Imagine robbing a bank without the threat of punishment. This job is exactly like that. A licensed bank robber evaluates the security measures in a bank. Although they are fictitious robbers, the job has grown into multiple sectors like identity theft and computer hacking. The next profession is of a professional sleeper. This person evaluates the comfort of hotel beds. Each night, the professional sleeps in a different bed and reviews them all in order to determine which one stands out, which one is the best one. Have you heard of an iceberg mover? It's not a type of equipment, it's actually a profession. The expert keeps a track of the location of icebergs and suggests safe detours around them. The concept comes from the Titanic disaster. Reports say the practice has prevented several additional tragedies. You see, an average iceberg mover earns nearly $20,000 annually. There are millions of profiles on online dating applications, but not everyone can successfully sell themselves. Here, an online dating ghostwriter comes to the rescue. A user can hire the specialist to create an online dating profile for them. And this helps the user's account look better, also attractive. If you are good with saying, "I'm sorry," then this job is for you, a professional apologizer. You heard that right. A professional apologizer says sorry on the behalf of a customer. They will keep offering their condolences until the other person is convinced. This job also actually exists. So at any point in time, if you feel like there is no profession out there for you, that no job seems to be right for you, please think again. There are multiple opportunities out there, unique roles that also pay well. You don't need to think big. You just need to think about what you are good at, even if it's something like sleeping. Scripting history, Virgin Galactic has successfully started its commercial operations, with its first paying customers being flown to the final frontier. The long-awaited achievement has put the emerging private spaceflight sector back on track. The first commercial flight of spaceflight company is now complete, and the crew on board has now returned on Earth, describing the ride as an unbelievable experience.
Much better than expected. It was a beautiful ride. It was actually very beautiful since the very beginning. Even climbing up with the Eve next to us. I mean, we were attached to the Eve, but seeing this other plane flying with us was a very, very interesting, amazing. And then the drop on all the climb up was a very interesting experience. Again, you can be told about during the training which kind of experiences you may have, but in the end, when it's your body and your senses are feeling, it's completely different.
Unbelievable, the acceleration, the climb, and suddenly the microgravity. And I was concentrated with my test with my knee board, but I had the opportunity to look outside and the view, it was amazing, fantastic. So, speechless.
The Virgin Galactic rocket plane, Unity, soared high over the New Mexico desert to enable 3 Italians to conduct science experiments in weightless conditions. Italian Air Force officers unfurled their country's flag and peered out windows at the Earth's curvature while enjoying a few minutes of weightlessness. In fact, the 72-minute mission has been dubbed Galactic 01. The twin fuselage mothership aircraft took off from a runway at Spaceport America in New Mexico, 8:30 a.m. local time. 40 minutes after gaining high altitude, it released a rocket-powered plane called VSS Unity, which soared into space at nearly Mach 3. Inside the spaceplane's cabin were 3 Italians, Colonel Walter Velade and Lieutenant Colonel Angelo Landolfi of the Italian Air Force, Pantaleon Carlucci of the National Research Council of Italy, and Colin Bennett of Virgin Galactic. There were also 2 pilots on the space plane and 2 on the carrier plane. The live stream showed Unity later gliding back safely to planet Earth. The commercial flight comes almost 2 years after Virgin Galactic's founder Richard Branson flew to space in a test flight, ushering in a new era of lucrative space tourism. A successful test in May paved the way for Thursday's mission. In total, it ran 5 test flights before the commercial flight. With its successful first spaceflight operation, Richard Branson will now begin sending up the 800 or so individuals who have bought tickets to ride on Unity. Let's now tell you what else made news around the world. Time for Gravitas Global Headlines.
Japan's foreign minister has said that the International Atomic Energy Agency's director is set to visit Japan in the first week of July to inspect the Fukushima nuclear power plant. Japan plans to release the water from Fukushima plant, which was destroyed during the 2011 nuclear disaster triggered by an earthquake and a tsunami. UK's Environment Minister Zach Goldsmith resigns a day after he was named in a report by MPs who condemned a campaign of abuse directed by supporters of former Prime Minister Boris Johnson. Pakistan could get temporary relief for its ballooning foreign debt with a new standby arrangement worth $3 billion announced by the IMF. Poland, backed by Hungary, staged a revolt against European Union migration reforms, leading to deadlock that on Friday stretched into a second day at the bloc's summit. The UK government will challenge a court ruling that blocks its plan to deport asylum seekers to Rwanda, a setback to its controversial bid to cut migrant numbers. 11 Chinese aircraft crossed the Taiwan Strait median line on Friday, according to Taiwan's defense ministry, as China ramped up military pressure on the democratic island. Severe floods left thousands of cargo trucks stranded near the Chile-Argentina border. Heavy rains and snowstorms caused structural damage to roads connecting the two countries. According to local reports, more than 2,000 trucks are packed up on the Chilean side, waiting to cross the border. A California-based law firm has sued ChatGPT maker OpenAI over plausible violation of people's privacy. According to media reports, OpenAI was slapped with a class action lawsuit. The case alleges that the platform violated the rights and privacy of millions of internet users. Novak Djokovic's quest for a record-equaling 8th Wimbledon men's singles title begins against world number 67 Pedro Cachin of Argentina. Djokovic faces some tricky opponents on his road to the final, as does women's top seed Iga Swiatek. Manchester United have agreed a deal with Chelsea for England midfielder Mason Mount. The Red Devils will pay around $69 million for the 24-year-old. United will pay an additional $6 million depending on Mount's appearances and success at the club.
With that, it's a wrap on this edition of Gravitas Tonight. We are leaving you with Gravitas images. Thanks very much for watching. Have a good weekend.
आने वाली खुशी के लिए एक ख्याल ही काफी है। ईबिक्स कैश हर खुशी के